Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hovercast Roundtable, your place for quality TCG content for all ages. I'm here once again this week with my friends Eric and Travis, and for those who don't know, my name is Brit. And this week, we just wanted to start this show sort of where we left off last week. Last week, we dedicated a lot of our discussion to the standard metagame, or in short, the effect of Decidueye Vileplume on the standard metagame. Just sort of like the question up in the air was whether or not, this deck was the real deal. Did it win? Or I guess it didn't win, but did it get such dominant results at the last international championship because of how good it was, or just because of how many people played it, or how impressive the turn one Vileplume was? And I think we were relatively split amongst the group, just sort of our takes on the deck, but as the week progressed, we tested a little. I know Eric and I both had some League Cups this weekend, and I just wanted to start the show by checking in with, everyone in the Hovercast to see what they currently thought, if their thoughts had changed, or if they were more or less in the same position. So let's go ahead and start with Eric. I don't think you played a standard cup this week, Eric, if that's right, but go ahead and just give us a short rundown of your take on the standard metagame right now.
So I did actually play one standard cup. I played on Sunday. I played Yveltal Garbodor. I actually really, really liked the deck. I was really surprised because I thought Yveltal wasn't going to be good in this meta because it's relying on two-shotting everything, and Yveltal has a tough time keeping up in two-shot trades against Mega Mewtwo and Decidueye, especially under item lock. But it ended up working out pretty well. I went 4-2. My two losses were to really bad luck. Nothing I could control. But besides that, the deck ran really smoothly after I started off 0-2, won 4 in a row. But Decidueye, I didn't play against it. In Standard, I played against it once in Expanded, and I should have won. But again, I had really bad luck. I needed to hit a DCE with 3 left with 15 cards in deck, and I had 4 turns to draw, and I just never did. So I don't think Decidueye is as dominant. I've been saying this all week. I don't think it's as dominant as everyone is making it out to be. I think it's a very good deck, but everyone is out to counter it right now. Everyone's playing Wobbuffet, everyone's playing Hex, everyone's playing something to beat it, or just playing a deck that has a favorable matchup against it in general, or they're playing the mirror match. So it's one of those decks that I think is just being played so much, and that's why it's having a lot of success. I do think it's a good deck, but it's not something that I would play because it's being countered so heavily, and I don't want to be playing a deck that everyone is out to beat. So I don't think Decidueye is a good play right now currently. It's a good deck, but not something I would consider playing.
All right, Travis, what do you have to say on that?
I mean, I largely agree. I think that I'm in the same place that I was last week about Decidueye. It's clearly a good deck, but I don't know. I think it's like most other decks. I don't think we really had something that's been Guardy Gallade good in a really long time. I think for the most part, when a deck becomes really good and people try really hard to beat it, it usually gets hated out of the metagame pretty successfully. And I think that's kind of what's happening with this deck. You're seeing Wob all over the place. It's in decks that it clearly doesn't belong in just to beat Decidueye Vileplume. And I mean, Hex is a good supporter that people are just now also playing. So I think it's just the way the format's rotating. It's just we all have to beat this deck because of how popular it is.
Yeah, I think that last time, and in the Six Prizes article that I wrote that came out last week, I sort of voiced a general disapproval with the deck. I just was skeptical of just the general consistency of a Vileplume deck. They just have to be built kind of differently than everything else, and I think at the end of the day, you kind of end up missing some general consistency that the non-Vileplume decks just inherently have to them. And then just the idea, just one Hex, one Wobbuffet in a lot of decks, maybe even double Hex in some decks that already played one. Just super hard to deal with. I played 2 standard League Cups this last weekend, and the first one I played Yveltal Garb as well. Eric sort of turned me onto the list early last week, and I toyed around with it, and I know we played a couple cards different, but in general the concept was the same, and I went 4-1 in Swiss, my loss being to a senior. The seniors were integrated with the Masters, and I lost to a senior playing the older Vileplume deck, the Vileplume Jolteon Regice deck, and he just got a turn 2 Jolteon, and basically just scooped. There's nothing I can do, and we didn't even play like Flare Grunt or anything to try to run him out of energy. But I got beat that game pretty bad. I lost in the top 4. Just to kind of the general bad beats of ending time at an inopportune like moment. I think that I definitely would have won a full game 3, but our first 2 games were both really long. And I won the first game against Volcanion, and the second game I lost a really long game, just where I had a commanding lead, and I just got like ended 2 or 3, and never drew anything to put me back in it, and I got overrun. Just sort of lost the tempo, and then the final game got called at 6-6 prizes, and like Eric said, Evital just has to rely on 2-shotting things, even smaller things like the Baby Volcanion. And it was a weird game. Like, we both kind of came close to deck out, just going out of our way to prevent prizes and stuff like that. But he was able to end up knocking out a Garbodor before I could 2-shot a Volcanion, unfortunately. So that's how it goes. But I'm a big fan, too, of the Evital Garb. Like, my loss was to Time, which questionably like a legitimate loss, and then an auto loss that is like a tier 4 deck. So I really enjoyed the deck that tournament. For the next day, I decided just to try out Decidueye Vileplume. I don't have the cards to own it, and one of the people I was staying with just did, and I knew he wasn't playing it, so I figured I would just get like a test run out of it in the tournament. And it was okay. Basically, all of my suspicions or skepticism about the deck, I had learned from playtesting, sort of just like showed their face the entire tournament. I played the mirror twice and like a bad deck, and ended up just IDing to 302, and then I got beat in the top 8 by a friend, the same friend who lent me the deck, Kevin Murphy, playing Travis and Eric's Mewtwo Garbodor list, which I think we talked about last episode. It was just pretty standard. Instead of the 1/1 Espeon that Travis played for Anaheim Regionals, it played 1 Wobbuffet and 1 Hex Maniac, and just those 2 cards just like, they only did something like 1 turn per game, but I got 2-0'd pretty badly by the Mewtwo, and that was sort of enough for me to be like, all right, Decidueye Vileplume's good, but maybe these counters are just a little too much for it to overcome. But I think Standard's in a really good spot right now. I had a lot of fun this weekend, and with the exception of just sort of how unfair Vileplume can be if it comes out on the first turn and you're going second, I think if there's like an errata to be made somewhere on that card, or like Forest of Giant Plants, I think Standard is in a really good place, and that's sort of optimistic looking forward. But that's enough on Standard for now. We want to shift our attention to Portland Regionals this weekend, which is another expanded tournament. And Eric and I will not be attending, but Travis will. So I want to go ahead and start our discussion on this issue with just having Travis talk us through his thought process and preparations for the tournament. Like, what do you like? What don't you like? What do you expect to see? Just all those general questions that most people are probably looking for answers for if they are attending this weekend.
So, when I was thinking about Portland, like usually when I'm trying, looking at the next big tournament, usually look at the most recent big tournament, look at those results and see how to kind of counter them. Looking at the top 8 of St. Louis Regionals, I think that there was kind of, I think there's some weaknesses to be found. One big thing I noticed, obviously Wobbuffet, we've been talking about it, it's insane right now because that Decidueye Vileplume deck has a lot of hype. There's also the Lurantis Vileplume deck that has a decent amount of hype, and then you have a deck like Mega Ray that relies on using Shamans 3 times on the first turn and then popping off for 240. Night March was up there as well. You have a lot of like pretty explosive decks, or decks that rely on ability use a lot. So I think that like kind of the conclusion I came to pretty quickly was like, oh, I should play a deck that just like has 3 or 4 Wobbuffet, because that'll immediately lock out just like most of the top 8 decks except for like the Excelgor Wob deck, right? So I kind of I'm on Groudon right now, and I think that I would play Groudon if the tournament were tomorrow for that reason. I think it beats every single deck that made top 8 pretty easily. You can, you open Wobbuffet and you just like slow down their setup, you lock them out of the entire game. They like don't really do anything for the first couple of turns because they don't get to use these abilities. I have a little bit of special energy hate in the Groudon list. The only deck that didn't play Special Energy in top 8 was Volcanion, which I think you beat anyway because you open Wob and you just like shut them down, and it takes them a while to start killing Wobbuffets. And I don't know, the way Volcanion goes, you usually have a good 6 turns before you actually have to do anything real. I don't know. That's what I'm on right now. I think if I like my backup deck right now is I have that deck that won Malmö Regionals, prepped for Expanded. It's just like that Decidueye deck with rainbows. I like the Espeon a lot because it's really good in Mirror. Against Mirror, whether it be Vileplume or other Decidueye decks. Like anything else that evolved, that Espeon just like destroys, which is really cool. And I just think the deck is still really strong. I think it's a little harder to hard counter in Expanded because of the deck diversity, which is kind of why I wanted to settle on a deck that naturally already played a ton of Wobs instead of playing a deck that I teched a bunch of Wobs and Hexes into. But yeah, that's basically my thought process right now going forward to Portland.
Yeah, that's good. I'm trying to sum up my thoughts just because I haven't played Expanded because I knew I wouldn't be competing in Expanded for a while. But I think one of the interesting things that we got to see happen in St. Louis was finally for the first time, I think it felt like Dark was finally not the most popular deck, which isn't to say that it wasn't played. It was still probably like the second most popular deck maybe, or the third. But I think we just got a weird metagame where Dark, didn't dominate for once. And there was still one in top 8. But usually, I think there was like 3 or 4 in the San Jose Expanded tournament. But generally speaking, in Expanded, Dark has always been the deck to talk about in Expanded. And if Dark is sort of on the down low, like if people have started to shy away for Dark, because I think that Night March has a good matchup against it. I think that Volcanion has a good matchup against it. All of these decks, if people are sort of looking towards those rather than Dark, I feel like that Trevenant has a really good opportunity to shine in Expanded. Trevenant, I think, is really good against the Vileplume decks. It's kind of hit or miss. Like it sometimes just comes down to who goes first. But it's a lot easier for the Trevenant to evolve on their first turn than it is to like get a Vileplume in play. So yeah, and then again, I think Trevenant's really good against Groudon, Night March. You just got to dodge Dark. And so I guess my point is, if Dark is sort of underplayed for a little bit, I think Trevenant really has an opportunity to shine once again. And that's sort of, again, also been part of the general narrative to Expanded, is that Trevenant wins these tournaments when Dark is countered out of it. Like in Philadelphia, Trevenant won. There was a Trevenant in finals of Arizona, correct?
Yep.
And it lost to the Greninja, but again, Greninja was a deck with a good Trevenant matchup and just like another metagame call. And now Greninja doesn't exist at all because of all of the grass hype. So that's another good thing that Trevenant has going for it. So yeah, I think I would definitely look to be playing Trevenant myself in Expanded. I would probably need a better metagame read. I would probably do a little more, steadying of like cup results out of California, because I know there'll be the tournament in Portland, and in general the West Coast seems to favor Evital Maxis more than anywhere else in the country, if not the world. And so that's another thing to consider as well. Maybe Trevenant wouldn't be good in that metagame, but that's my hot take on Portland at least. Eric, we haven't heard from you yet. Do you have any new thoughts, or just like another completely different deck that you want to hype up?
So I want to add to Trevenant a little bit. I also think it's a good play. I wouldn't play the version that Jonathan Crespo did well with at Philly. One, I think that version is just objectively worse than the Bursting Balloon version. And two, the Bursting Balloon version plays Wobbuffet, which is incredibly strong right now, like Travis is saying. So I think that version is by far the better version to play. Because I don't think you beat Vileplume without that, because Lurantis is just too good against Trevenant. Like that card on its own just counters Trevenant. So you need, I think Wobbuffet gives you a much better chance, especially with Bursting Balloons. Those two cards in tandem, I think, give you a really good chance against that deck. I wouldn't play Groudon. I think Groudon sucks. I think it gets absolutely destroyed by Lurantis Vileplume, even though Travis says otherwise. It does. I think it's awful. But I think the play that I would do, because I think Lurantis Vileplume is probably the best deck in the format right now, and I think a lot of people are going to be countering it with decks such as Rayquaza, and I think a deck that counters all the counters to Lorantis Vileplume is Night March. I'm in a tough spot because the deck that I love playing in Expanded right now, Tobats, isn't really a good play. So I have to kind of find something else to play. So it's kind of weird not being able to just, fall back to something that a comfort pick. But Night March is something that I also enjoy playing a lot. I played it this weekend for my Expanded Cup. I liked it. I didn't like the list I played. I played Peter Kika's list. I didn't think it was very good. But I do think Night March is a very good play currently. I think it's going to be very dominant in Portland. I think someone who takes the risk and doesn't hit any of the Vileplume matchups, because that really just comes down to who goes first. I think if someone can dodge that and just hit everything else, I think someone's going to do really well with Night March. So I would definitely consider Night March just because I can't really play any of my comfort picks right now. But Trevenant is also a really good play, but not the Rescue Scarf version, the Bursting Balloon version with Wobbuffets.
Mm-hmm. I think I would definitely lean towards that version as well. I know that I'm trying to think of, in general, which one tends to do well, the Bursting Balloon, does it do better than the Crushing Hammer version? I think it's pretty even, if not slightly skewed towards the Crushing Hammer version. Like, just looking at results in general, at Nationals this last year, I believe the 2 or 3 Trevenant decks that made the top 8 were like the red card Crushing Hammer versions. But I've just never liked those personally. I like the Bursting Balloons a lot more. I think they make some of your closer matchups a lot better. Like, you can steal some games off Evital pretty easily with just like Bursting Balloon into Wobbuffets to like one shot Fright Knights and troublesome Pokemon like that. And then against Night March, like, I think Night March against the Crushing Hammer version, it's like actually pretty close to 50-50, whereas Night March is unfavored against Bursting Balloon for obvious reasons. You just kind of lose an energy and attacker every time you take a prize. But anyways, Trevenant, we like Trevenant. What else do we want to talk about today? So we've got Portland this weekend, Expanded. I think the numbers are looking kind of low as far as the turnout is concerned, and that, for whatever reason, is generally the case for Portland. I couldn't really tell you why, but like, I know that the 2 years in a row that Jacob Van Wagner won regionals up there, they were both 8 rounds top 8, which was sort of unprecedented, where like every other regionals that year had the +5 Swiss top 8. And so I think if you're looking at a smaller tournament, then the smaller the metagame, the lower the number of people are, the easier it is to metagame. Like, it's always a hard question about how hard you want to tech your deck. Mm-hmm. But in general, I think a good rule of thumb to follow is like the less people, the better. Which is why, like, at a 15-person League Cup, you can kind of play like a bad list, quote unquote, with like answers to the 5 other good players there. Whereas at like a regionals, you would never do that, like a 15-round regionals, let's say. So let's see. I'm trying to think of any other popular decks. We had the Lapras deck pop out of the UK regionals, which was standard. Do you think that deck's? Do you guys like that deck at all? Do you think that it's something to look at, maybe even for Expanded? Like, does Lapras go into the Water Box deck in Expanded now, or just like, how did he top 8? Let's talk about Lapras right now, because I know there's a couple of people at the League Cup I was at yesterday that both played it, and they did very bad. In general, I don't really understand how that deck works. But let's start with Eric. Eric is quite opinionated on Lapras.
Yeah, so I played against it this weekend. I played against Adam Vernola using it. Good player, so I know, like, he did make a couple of misplays, but I know he's a good player, so I know I got some good testing it against it. Not some just, someone playing the deck extremely poorly, which would, skew the results. There was another Lapras, I think Joe Baca played it as well at the Chicago Cup that I was at, and he made top 4. But he only beat Caleb Gettimer in top 8 because he dead drew, he said. So I don't really count that result. So it was really just a top 8. For Joe, because I think Nietzsche destroys Lapras. But Lapras, it's bad. It's really bad. It auto-loses to anything playing Tauros, fighting Fury Bell, and Pokemon Center Lady. It can't one-shot a Tauros, and Tauros just says, okay, I'm going to one-shot your Lapras back, and then you're going to have to build up an entirely new one. So what I did against it, I just held my resources really well. I just powered up a Tauros fully with basic energy, forcing him to hit Crushing Hammer, hit flips, or Team Flare Grunts every turn. And by the end of the game, I had like 4 basic energy on a Tauros. So I basically said, if you don't start hitting into my Tauros, I'm going to threaten a Ninja Boy into an Evil Tall and just start taking Evil Ball knockouts because Lapras has 3 energy on it, so I'm doing a lot of damage, and I can just attach a DCE after doing a Horn attack once and take a knockout, even with a Fury Belt. So if you're just really patient against Lapras, it shouldn't be a hard matchup. I can see why it beats Decidueye just by running it out of energy if they set up item lock and they kind of item lock themselves out of their recovery. Although I guess you kind of need to for the Crushing Hammers, but I don't know. I don't think Lapras is a good deck at all. I wouldn't play it. I think it just preys on bad players who don't know how to play it, play against it. I think the deck sucks.
Travis, you're up.
I mean, we've kind of seen these concepts before, like the quad X, and then just a bunch of like disruption, and like I feel like there was a Seismitoad deck that came out of Europe last year that was like very, very similar, right? It had like Rough Seas and Assault Vest because Fury Belt wasn't out yet. Like, I think that these like quad X decks are all like relatively similar. I mean, it's mostly resource draining, and they always seem to kind of like use some like weird cards, and a lot of them are surprise factors. Like, I think that those kind of decks, like once people are like, oh, that's what that is, and they kind of figure it out, it's like pretty easy to beat, but they're always kind of used to like catch people off guard and like maybe take like a certain metagame by storm and just be a little more surprising than anything. But as far as Lapras as a card goes, I think it's like a fine card. An expanded water box, I think it's like a really, really good play. I would play one in expanded water box because it's like already good. It just like gives you a big heavy hitter and a GX attack. So I would recommend it as far as that, moving forward with it in water box goes. But as a solo quad deck, I just don't think that it's particularly strong because those decks are pretty easy to play against once you figure them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that both of them, both Travis and Eric, sort of hit the nail on the head. I think those kind of decks succeed in a metagame, in a tournament where no one knows what they do, and so they misplay themselves out of games just due to general unfamiliarity. So like the Lapras deck plays a lot of energy removal and like Judge and stuff like that, and so once you sort of know what to expect, it's a lot easier to play the conservative game. But like if you don't know what the deck does, like Wailord for instance, Wailord did a very similar thing, and people, by day 2, people were beating it by chorusing themselves to 0 on the first turn, and then just eventually hitting it, like 20 times, and slowly winning this long game. But day 1, people are like, Wailord, this player must be terrible, and then, Sycamore every turn and stuff like that. And so I think that's a very good way to think about it, is it's just, there's a surprise factor to decks. And so, like, props to Carl Peters, I believe, is the one who played it. I think he, showed some real ingenuity and creativity, like, striking with the deck. But I don't think it's very good. It's cute. It's like a tier 3 deck. But, again, I think just once you know what to expect, it becomes a lot harder to do well with, unless it's just really good. But, I mean, Wailord is a good deck to compare it to, and Wailord never saw results ever again, really. But yeah, I think that's the best take on that. And I think that's all we really have to talk about today. Look forward to stream some stuff from 2 of us, maybe all 3 of us, throughout this week. And then good luck to Travis and everyone going to Portland. And then after that, we've got just a little break. And then the Puerto Rico tournament is the very first weekend of April. I think, Eric, are you going to that?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Eric will be going to that. It's standard, and so we'll be looking at standard once again, and maybe there'll be, more cups and regionals results to analyze, or maybe like a new hot deck to talk about. But otherwise, I think that's all we have today. So thank you for watching, and just look forward to more content coming out from us within the next couple days, and we hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.